The 88th Texas Legislature is meeting right now in Austin, and lawmakers have wasted no time getting their ideas turned into bills. In fact, about 3,000 bills are flying through the process so far, with plenty more expected to come. Some good, some bad, and some worth talking about. The tsunami of legislation makes it hard for some Texans to keep up with it all, but don't worry. TPPF is here to help you stay informed about the policies and the policymakers working to advance the cause of liberty. This is The Layout. I'm James Quintero, Policy Director for the Government for the People campaign here at TPPF, and today I'm with Representative Brian Harrison, who joins us from House District 10. Representative, welcome to the show.
James, appreciate you having me. Great to be here with you, and always good to be at TPPF.
Well, thanks, sir. Today we're going to be discussing HB 1476, a bill to bring common sense reform to public sector salaries. Representative, let's dig on in. What's the problem we're getting at with this particular bill?
Yeah, so I'm very proud to highlight a problem that I think far too few Texans are even aware of. I don't think many of my constituents have any idea how many taxpayer-funded government bureaucrat salaries are not just higher than the governor of Texas, but many times higher in some cases than the governor. And if you think about it and ask yourself, who has more responsibility? Who has more authority? Who has more staff? Who has more constituents than the governor of Texas, who presides over a state of 30 million people than the governor? I would submit the answer is zero in terms of state level or local level bureaucrats. Yet, so why does it make sense for us to be paying them salaries that far exceed his? And so my bill simply sets out to solve that problem by saying, hey, look, if you're a taxpayer-funded local official in the state of Texas, you cannot make more than the governor of the state of Texas.
Mm-hmm. And if I understand the bill correctly, this would apply to state and local government employees. Is that right?
Correct. That's right. So state employees or employees of any political subdivision. So that's your counties and your cities and your schools. That's right.
And so let's say HB 1476 were to become law. Mm-hmm. How would that affect the average Texan in your mind?
Well, so one of the, if not the most important responsibility that I and other elected officials here in Austin have is the stewardship and the custody of my constituents' hard-earned taxpayer money, and especially in an era of economic uncertainty and inflation that has eaten away at their savings accounts and eaten away at what their dollars can purchase for them. There's no higher charge for us than to make sure we spend their money prudently. So I think this is one thing that we can do to stop out-of-control spending, because when spending rises, guess what follows? Taxes. And I'm very concerned right now with so many Texans having a hard time putting food on the plate, putting gas in the tank, or worried they're going to even be able to stay in their homes because unfortunately in Texas we still have way too high rates of property taxation. It is unfair for those Texans to have to subsidize the salaries of local bureaucrats who are getting rich at their expense.
Now, of course, critics are going to argue that if this law were to become effective, then government's ability to recruit and retain might be harmed. How would you respond to that?
And I hear this, and actually it makes me laugh just a little bit. I think my bill solves that problem, because what we have right now is a competitive and vicious cycle that very perversely leads to a constant increase in local government salaries. Because what happens is anytime one political subdivision, let's say one city, decides to give all of their staff a 20% pay raise, which despite that sounding crazy, that's a lot more common than people realize. Just give everybody across the board a 20% pay raise from one year to the next. Well, what happens is the neighboring city hires a very expensive consultant using taxpayer money. They do a survey of the local pay rates across the board, and they come back and say, hey, you know what, to be competitive with this other city, we've got to raise our salaries by 22%. And then the next city does the same thing, and it's a vicious cycle. If we had a cap, which, by the way, is a practice that has been in place at the federal government for a very long time. There's a model, this absolutely works to protect taxpayer money. If we had a cap, it would solve the problem of people bouncing between the various political subdivisions looking for higher pay. You would actually have to leave the great state of Texas if you wanted to avoid that salary cap. I think most people, and they would be the first to tell you, who get into government service, they're there to serve the people. And if you're there to serve the people, guess what you're not there for? You're not there to get rich. And I am sick and tired of local bureaucrats getting rich on the backs of hardworking Texans.
Now, last question. I know it's early in the process, but have you had any reception from your constituents or others on this bill?
Yeah, especially from the constituents. If you're somebody who's a taxpayer in the state of Texas, when you hear about my bill, my goodness, people are beside themselves with excitement because they don't always know why it's happening. Like I said, most people have no idea that some local officials, even in small rural Texas, are making in excess in compensation of over $500,000 a year, even though they only have a small fraction of the governor's salary. A lot of people are unaware of that. When they become unaware of that, they quite frankly, not only are they happy with this bill, they demand that their legislature take an action like this.
Well, Representative, I wish you well in your efforts, and thank you for stopping by.
Oh, great talking with you. Thank you, James.